Good morning all and welcome today to the FEHE or Further and Higher Education Forum. My name is Natasha Maluza. I am the Communications and Engagement Officer here at the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. So just before we get started, I want to observe all protocol, the VIPs, the chairperson today as well. Thank you all for coming today. And also I'll just put through a few housekeeping notes for today, not too long today, thankfully. So we have no fire drill today, so we're good on that. So we should not be evacuating for anything in terms of fire drill. And also know that we have toilets right at the back there for everyone in the room. So where Peter's coming from, just direction. And also, if possible, for all our attendees online, if you could please switch on your videos when you're speaking so that we can also be able to see you from the room over here as well. And after the meeting, we will have a little gathering for in-person people. We have some tea and coffees over there so you can do some networking, catch up, chat with a friend. And from now on, I'll hand over to Chad, who is the Deputy CEO here at the Scotland-Malawi Partnership.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Yes, as Natasha just said, the Deputy CEO here at the SMP, for those of you who are maybe joining us for the first time, but lots of familiar names there in the chat box. Just briefly, I just wanted to welcome you back to the Spring Further and Higher Education Forum meeting. Our last meeting was in December in the Glasgow City Chambers, and there's several people present today that were with us at that point. And we, unfortunately, I wasn't in person at that event. I came down with COVID right before, so I was online, watching everybody in the room. We had a very lively discussion about what SMP and our sister organization, MaSP, in Malawi can do to support all academic links between Scotland and Malawi, and particularly those academics who travel back and forth, whether it be for a short visit or a longer stint in terms of studies. So we'd like to maybe continue part of that conversation today. Linda, who we'll hear from later, the interim CEO at MaSP, is with us in the meeting. So as Natasha mentioned, our chair today is Dr. Yonah Matemba, who's an SMP trustee and a senior lecturer at the University of the West of Scotland and chair of this forum for several years now. So we'll hand over to Yonah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and to our colleagues online, both in Malawi, but also online here in Scotland or elsewhere, probably you may be today. As I've been introduced, my name is Yonah. I am the chair of this forum and have been so for quite a number of years now. I just want to welcome you once again. We met on the 14th of December, and now we are back at this the forum. These forums are really quite important because they help us to not just connect with new colleagues, but reconnecting old colleagues as well. Anything else to do with further and higher education between the two nations. So really welcome you all for attending today. Let me just take this opportunity probably to welcome people in a special way. Maybe some of you may not know, but the person sitting next to me is Dr. Peter West. And the reason I'm introducing him, especially for the Malawians in the room and those online, is that he is our Malawi Honorary Consul in Scotland. So if you were to want to know who is the Honorary Consul in Scotland and you've heard the name, this is Dr. Peter West. For many years, he was at Scotland University where we met, I don't know, many years ago. So thank you so much for coming today and joining us at this meeting. I think today is an interesting day because we don't have a set agenda as such. But we really want to hear from our members, those present in this room here, but also some of our members who are online, and they could be visitors, welcome, but also some of our members who have just joined us and just want to listen in. I think what's important, as we always do at such forums, is that we want to hear what kind of work you're doing pertaining to Malawi and Scotland, pertaining to education, what kind of research projects that you might be doing, engaging in, what kind of collaborations you're involved in, what kind of successes so far you have encountered and you want to share with others, good practice, for example. And sometimes even obstacles are an example to share, especially when you're talking about two people who are separated by this huge ocean of the world, and the oceans have got a story to tell. that gulf of the oceans for the story to tell of what separates us, but also, in this case, what unites us. So that's why I really want to encourage you. For those who are willing to speak, please just put up your hand. If you're online, please make sure that we can see your face as well. It will be very helpful to put a name and a face together, if that's okay. I've got a few names that I might want to call up as a starting point, but anytime, if you have got questions, especially online, please just write them on the chat, and then they can be read out to us, or we can ask you to lead us through the questions that you have posted online. I'm looking for Seth. I haven't seen Seth on the online. Is Seth around?
I don't think so.
Because I know he was attending online.
Not yet.
But I've seen Winnie is online. I've seen Winnie online.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Winnie, please, to join us? And if you could introduce yourself and just share a few thoughts about the things I've mentioned of what were your connections with Malawi and any projects or anything you'd like to share.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Get away.
Good morning. My name is Winfred Bunihizi. I'm from the University of Dundee and the Africa Projects Manager at the University of Dundee. And as the university, we have a lot of projects that we are doing with the public institutions in Malawi, the 6 public institutions under the Blantyre Declaration. So yes, and we have been working closely with the Scotland-Malawi partnership and the Malawi-Scotland partnership. So I'm always pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any updates so far in terms of some of the things that the members can benefit from, some of the successes that they've encountered so far?
From the University of Dundee, we have a project that's ongoing. It's the a PhD project. It's the Africa Doctoral Fellowship Scheme. And if I may introduce one of our members, Devasio is from Malawi. He can chip in and tell us more about it. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, that will be helpful. Thank you. You're muted for now.
Oh,
Yeah, that's better. That's better. Introduce
all right,
yourself,
thank
sir,
you.
and please tell us more about yourself. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Gevazo Brown Nyaka from Malawi, and I'm a lecturer at the University of at the Kamuzu University of Health Sciences. And I came here to the University of Dundee under the African Doctoral Fellowship Scheme, which is targeting lecturers in different academic institutions in Malawi. So I'm one of the first cohorts that have come to the University of Dundee to study under that scheme. I'm happy to join you for the first time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we welcome you here in Scotland as well. So thank you.
Could we ask what's the
Yes.
My name is Maluza. I'm from Queen Margaret University, and I'd love to hear what your PhD is focusing on.
So thank you so much. My PhD is about interprofessional simulation education. So it's about, we are looking at how health professionals are trained vis-a-vis what is expected of them after they're finished. So in most cases, our health professionals are trained in silos. They've got medical doctors, nurses, pharmacists being trained in silos. And this has shown that it has got different problems at the end, because there is lack of collaboration and communication when they start working. And that leads to issues of stereotypes, single events, and we have had cases where patients have had their conditions aggravated because the health professionals can't just coordinate and collaborate. So I'm looking at how about bringing an intervention, which is about interprofessional simulation education, where these health professionals can start training together using simulation so that they have an idea of what collaboration is like at the end of the day, so that they can collaborate at the very early stages. And when they start working after they have graduated, they actually know what collaboration is all about, what collaborative practice is all about. So that's what my project is targeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's
Thank
very
you.
helpful. And thanks, Emma, for adding that question, because we now come to understand the important work that is actually doing the issue of collaboration among tech workers. But I think you mentioned something important about silos.
Yeah.
You're working in silos, and we're trying to break the silos. That's why we are having this forum, so that we can begin to share good practices, but also we can begin to, I was talking earlier with Tracy and saying, sometimes you might find there's a project going somewhere, another can benefit from it. So if we break the silos, you might find out that whatever is being planned can benefit quite a number of people at the same time.
Very much so.
So thank you so much, sir, for sharing that. It's really quite helpful.
Yonah, if I may, I believe Esther's online here, and she's also based at the University of Dundee, part of the same cohort.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Winnie raised her hand.
Yes, Win. I think you put a hand there, Win. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I had forgotten to introduce Esther, who is also one of our scholars. Thank you. Esther, if you may. Thank you.
Yes, please, Esther.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Esther Mabedi, and I'm a lecturer with Malawi University of Science and Technology. But I'm doing a PhD in advancing methods of assessment of groundwater contamination. So I'll be looking at contamination from pit latrines and trying to improve methods on how contamination risk of groundwater from pit latrines can be done or can be further improved in our practices in Malawi. So I'll be working mainly in Blantyre, in the southern region, not just Blantyre as a district, but in several districts in the southern region. Thank you. And I'm also under the Africa Doctoral Fellowship Scheme.
Indeed. That's a fantastic scheme, that one, isn't it? And we thank you. I mean, even your project is quite important, because in Malawi, almost 90% of us are computer trains.
Yeah.
It's really an issue, and it affects groundwater. I know that you've been doing this work for quite a long time, how that eventually affects the water that people drink in the villages. So it's an important project. So thank you so much for sharing that. Really useful. And I'm sure that Tracy, because you're next, I'm going to now. But it's interesting what I'm saying, because I know that you're in that area of health and so on and so forth. So please share with us. Introduce yourself so that others who don't know you, please. Anyway.
I'll give a bit of an update. So I'm Tracy Morse. I'm a professor of environmental health at Strathclyde, but also I have too many job titles. I also head up the University's Centre for Sustainable Development. I'm the regional lead for Africa coordination as well. So I have a kind of general Strathclyde update, and I can certainly talk about WASH things in there as well. Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah.
So from a Strathclyde perspective, we've got a number of different projects going on as usual. So I think, as most people here know, we host the Global Renewable Centre for Scottish Government there at Strathclyde. Damien Frame leads on that, and I think that's really taking off now in terms of engagement between Malawi, but also Zambia and Rwanda, and how they can engage also with the private sector and SMEs here in Scotland around renewable energy. So that's really taking off. But their team have also just closed off the EASE project, which was one of the first, or I think is the first, mini-grid renewable energy system that's supplied a whole community in Malawi as well. And there's been a lot of technical as well as the amount of social and then economic research around that's gone on too. So they're now moving into research that's looking at how do we scale these mini-grid systems as a way of giving energy across Malawi too. So that's really interesting, and also feeding into Zambia and things too through the GRC. We have lots of things going on in WASH, so different programs, links with Stirling University that look at plastics waste and how we manage that, particularly in urban environments, and how the risk to public health from those as well, the attachment of typhoid, cholera, and all these other problems that we're seeing escalating as well in these communities. We have some other really interesting work going on around guardian waiting shelters. I mean, since we don't have a big agenda, I'm going to go on a big list.
Yes.
we just finished that up, and colleagues actually just had a workshop with the kind of policymakers and NGOs in Malawi about this week. I think one of the really interesting things around the guardian waiting shelters, they're a massively neglected area. In fact, when Peter was still at Strathclyde, the Millennium Project, we put quite a amount of money into renovating ones in Chihuahua, for example. But often the ownership of the guardian shelters is really vague. So some belong to district. Sorry, so guardian waiting shelters where you go to hospital, you need someone to come with you because there's not enough ward attendants and people to support. So you come with a family member, they need somewhere to stay. So especially for those who don't have much income, they tend to sleep. So they're big open areas. You kind of have about 1 meter square to sleep on, no storage, often no security, not lockable doors, no lights, very poor conditions in the majority of districts. So we did a whole piece of work a couple of years ago around the southern region districts, which was eye-opening because we were looking to use them as a way of leveraging health promotion education. And then thought, well, we can't do that if there's no health hygiene promotion going on in the actual place itself. So that kind of pivoted then to a lot of advocacy work with government, and it's really been nice now to see them engage with this and look at what do we do with guardian shelters. What do we do in terms of the management, the ownership, integrating them into the infection prevention control systems within the hospitals and things as well. So that's been interesting and was super helpful as well when the cholera epidemic did come, because we were already looking at guardian waiting shelters and their role. And actually what guardians of cholera patients have to do is pretty horrific. And, you know, in terms of not having protective clothing, ending up as cholera patients themselves. So it's been some really interesting work there. And I say all of this because if there's anything interesting in there for people here or online, we're really happy to discuss it in more detail. And also working now on kind of, it's a lot of projects that have been ongoing and now going into the kind of policy programming stage around group hand washing facilities for schools as well. So again, looking at, often schools are given buckets, one tap, 1,000 kids, doesn't really work for hand washing and hygiene in practice. So we've been working with schools on developing and designing and a co-design process for putting in suitable group hand washing facilities. That can be just taking the bucket, putting a bit of PVC pipe with holes in it, you turn the tap and then there's lots of holes that everyone can wash their hands from, for example. So that's been really exciting. And again, we're now building a toolkit for that will go along with the school wash guidelines. So I'm going out to do that next week. So there's lots of interesting things going on in the wash side of stuff. And also then we have the Global Health Research Group for Adolescent Health and Wellbeing, which Velia is one of our PhD students on that. We now have 6 PhD students aligned with that, 5 of which are female Malawians, which is very exciting. And that's looking at a whole plethora of issues and trying to understand decisions made around sexual reproductive health rights for early adolescents, so a longitudinal study around 10 to 14-year-olds over 2 years, but within that also looking at the economics of providing proper healthcare to adolescents, looking at the health system that's there at the moment, understanding how we look at sexual reproductive health rights and how they're affected by adverse childhood experiences, how wash access affects their ability to go to school and things as well. And last but not least, the well-being side, which I will invite Velia to maybe say a little bit about the well-being side, which she leads on with her PhD.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, I've still got more to say. I'm Velia.
You can take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you've already heard, I'm Velia Manyonga. Just started my PhD in social policy, but as Tracy has highlighted, actually I'm one of the beneficiaries on this program, and I'm focusing on exploring the understanding of well-being among young Malawian. You know, usually as adults, sometimes we define well-being for young ones according to our perceptions. We don't really know how they define well-being to them. Our definition of well-being may not be what they want or what they call well-being. So my project is really exploring the definition of well-being among them, but specifically, I'll end up like designing intervention that will support well-being for the young Malawians. And to do this, I'm excited because I'm going to use like participatory methods, like photo voices. So these are the methods we are going to employ. So that's the short brief of where.
Absolutely hit the ground running. She has been an inspiration to us all the last few months. A couple of other maybe quick things from me, sorry,
Yes.
Yonah, is just to say, in October, we're having an event with SMP as well at Strathclyde. So that's going to be looking at our shared future, the future of our engagement as a university with African institutions in general. Obviously, there will be quite a focus on Malawi in there. We want to showcase what Strathclyde have done over the last nearly 30 years now, and working in Malawi as well, which has been quite considerable. And I think we're quite quiet, but sometimes we do a bit of showboating for once, but also really bringing our colleagues from across Africa and Malawi included in that to look at what that engagement should look like going forward. And what should our partners, what do our other higher education and other partners want out of that? And so that will be on the 9th and 10th of October. I'm putting it in people's minds for now. The 9th in particular will be a very open event, and we would invite colleagues from across SMP to come and join us on that and be part of that conversation.
Just to interject, I think you might want to mention that it's part of your Diamond Jubilee.
Yes, it's part of our Diamond Jubilee. Strathclyde, thank you, Mr. Morse. The Strathclyde is 60 this year, alongside Malawi being 60 this year, so it's a really nice opportunity as well to showcase that. And maybe something just for discussion in the wider group. So yesterday I was at Glasgow University. There was an event looking at international development and sharing, and there were a number of institutions there. It was really interesting, mostly focused around what people are doing in ODA countries. And you saw Malawi come up again and again and again. And I think for all our institutions at the moment, we're being given our ISPF funds and our institutional funds for the ISPF. And there's lots of great small projects going on across all of our institutions with some crossover. And I think if SMP could have a role somehow in how we pull those together to make the most of that ISPF money to learn from one another, that would be really positive. I know we have, I was just double checking, we have 5 ISPF projects right now funded in Malawi, everything from the energy and wash side through to now new partnerships in civil engineering, looking at natural fibres for more climate resilient construction, for example. So there's lots of interesting things going on, and I think it'd be great if we could have it.
In the spirit of acronyms, ISPF for
I'm sorry.
non-academics.
No, I was hoping you were going to ask that. I think it's the International Science Partnerships Fund. Is it? Yes.
Yeah.
It basically, there was the Global Challenges Research Fund, which the government killed, sadly. And this is kind of the replacement for that, although it's quite challenging to get into. And it's being spread out through lots of different academies. Rather than a central pot, there's some of the British Academy, some with the Royal Academy, some with engineering, some with Royal Society. And so you have to really keep an eye on what's going on. But I think there's an opportunity to kind of bring together some of the projects that are happening in Malawi that are similar, to go for that bigger funding then across Scottish institutions.
And that was something that was raised. I've forgotten the organisation. It was at the RSA. Remember the event we went to? And it was really clear in that there were actually projects that had been funded. It was the one about air being affected by cooking pots.
Oh, because we do it. Liverpool.
And that point was made there, wasn't it? Is there a way that we can bring this together so we're not just having money being spent doing exactly the same research?
Just building. Sorry, I'm finished now.
All right.
Sorry for the long ramble.
No, thank you so much, Tracy. That's quite helpful, really. Just as you're speaking, I noticed that we've got colleagues who are online, but from, for example, DMI, I've seen DMI, I've seen somebody from University of Malawi, they're online. The reason I'm mentioning them is that these are sort of networks who like, not just to build it, but to also, enhance. So, so by hearing what people are sharing in this room and even in the chat, here is the forum where people can begin to ask those questions, make the connections they want to make. Emails, if you want, you can ask us for my partnership. We can provide emails to specific individuals in this room who are speaking about specific things. one of the things that, just a minute, Emma, one of the things that I've taken from what you were saying about the Stratcad projects, especially the one for the shelters, really, those are simple but more powerful projects. Because they're affecting all of us from Malawi. We've gone through that. We know exactly what you're talking about. We know exactly what the problem is. And it's one of those things you look at and people just pass by, not knowing what to do. Yeah. And so to see that there's a focus on community-based, really impacting the communities that live there and the people who come and attend to their relatives, different from the life here, because when you go to the hospital, the nurses take care of you. But there you have to go somebody to be with you there. So thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, Emma.
Sorry, this is a really sort of micro question, but I'm interested in it. I'm loving hearing that we're doing work around collecting plastics and things like that, which clearly is a huge problem. One of the things we were trying to sort of pin down is there's definitely a project around Malawi making plastics and other waste into briquettes that can then be burnt instead of trees. And I just wondered if that was any part of that, or I'm still trying to sort of figure out where to find out more about that.
About the briquettes.
Yes.
I would be worried if people were burning briquettes made of plastic because of the toxicity that would come out of that. But there were people making briquettes from plastic many years ago in the building. So I'm wondering if there's a mix up there. So there was an organisation, which I forget the name of, you may remember. That used the Trust Foundation or something. They used to make them, but again, the problem is with a lot of these little fabulous SMEs and entrepreneurial things, they're relying on one person and that person goes and then they disappear. So I don't know if it's still going or not.
It was a very small project, and we at Phoenix School in Blantyre were collecting plastics, donating it to them, and they were making plastic briquettes. Right. And they needed specialized equipment to make that briquette, and I think it needed some imported adhesives to kind of bind it. And then you could do small structures, but I'm not sure if it would have been safe enough to build a larger structure.
Briquettes that I'm trying to track down how we can get hold, because obviously burning firewood is such a massive problem affecting everyone.
But you do have a lot of very toxic chemicals in plastics that you would want to burn.
I know
because we've looked at that with the air quality stuff when people, because a lot of people use the blue bag to start their mola for the cooking. And so there's, measuring that, you can see the different pHs and things in the air from that.
Need to get that implemented, what's already, I think, been legislated but not enacted in terms of the plastic ban.
So it just got lifted last week. The injunction against the plastics ban got lifted last week. But it's the enforcement now that's the challenge. And what we found with the plastics is it is primarily the very thin blue plastic bags and those kind of things. The thicker plastic bags that people get in the market, they use again and again and again. It is the blue flowers of Malawi that we see everywhere.
The single-use type.
So.
Thank you very much. Next, can I come to Mr. Peter Jeji? You're next on my list. Introduce yourself so people know more about you, but also please let us know in updates.
All right. Yes, Yonah said I'm Peter Jeji and a PhD student at the University of Glasgow, PhD in applied linguistics. But my project is my PhD project is focusing on the NGO community engagement practices and looking at how the engagement practices affect community participation, as well as sustainability. But what I would want to talk about is I've just finished my placement with SMP, and I was working on, or I am, it's not yet done, working on a resource material for community engagement that NGOs can use or refer to, some sort of a compass, not necessarily a prescription of what they have to do, because circumstances are different, the context may be different, but something like a compass that NGOs can refer to when they want to engage their community. So at the moment, still in draft form, and I've sent it to some few colleagues in Malawi to review it. The idea is I want something that reflects on the actual experiences on the ground, because I don't work with NGOs, I'm in the academia. But what I did so was to get input from the practitioners themselves, people working with the NGOs, both in Malawi and here in Scotland. So after getting those ideas, I had to put them together, and then I sent it back for review so that they have to look at it if it's reflecting on what we have been discussing. So once I get feedback from the Malawi colleagues, then I will also have to send it to these people that I consulted here in Scotland. And I'm hoping that once that is done, then I'll have to make it through SMP. We'll have to make it available because it's a document which is made possible because of SMP. So, so SMP will have to help in terms of making that available to other people. And one thing that I have to say, yesterday I had a meeting with, unfortunately, I'm saying this before I report to Stuart, but anyway, I will still say.
You're protected.
But I was supposed to report to Stuart first before
The chair in charge.
Yeah, so yesterday I had a meeting with Kate and Keith from Climate Justice Fund, Scottish Government, which Stuart helped me to set up that meeting. And when I explained to them about the resource material that I'm developing, they were interested, and they have suggested that in August, we should organize some sort of a workshop where I'll have to present that to the Scottish government team, so that they appreciate what that document is all about and how they can take advantage of it and possibly make use of that in their own projects and engagement with Malawi. Yeah, so let me stop there for now.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Very, very helpful. It's better to know how this PhD projects can turn into something useful for other people. And I'm hearing the PhD projects that are going on. It's clearly that people can actually practically benefit from the work that's been undertaken.
Yeah, so next stop will be
Yeah.
Trust Office. I think.
She's right.
Because you love that green color.
Yeah, I didn't get input from you, so I think we need to have a chat as well.
That would be great. Thanks, Peter. Very welcome.
No, thank you very much. Now, online, can I ask colleagues online if you like, if you have a project or got something or some connection with Malawi that you'd like to share? Can I give you the moment, please?
Gertrude, we'd love to hear from you, being that you're our next door neighbor and have run away from us back to Malawi, I believe.
Hi. Hi, so I'm Gertrude Banda. I'm a Badet Fellow based at the University of Edinburgh. I'm a registered nurse midwife from Malawi. I'm currently in Malawi, yes, to do some data collection. I'll be back somewhere in the first or second week of June. My work is basically on looking at the midwifery workforce in Malawi. I'm looking at task shifting within the midwifery workforce, how it's organized, how midwives are trained, deployed, and retained in Malawi, and how the workforce in general is organized. So I'm currently back in Malawi for data collection, and it's my first time to be in the meeting, and I'm happy to join in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful to know the type of project that you're engaged with. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Anyone else online who would like to share some thoughts?
Davey's got his camera on there.
You're muted, David.
Hello.
Welcome.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm just joining in now. I was in another meeting. Yeah, because apparently I've just finished my studies in public sociology degree, and yeah, I was talking to my research supervisor about what to do next. Yeah, so I've done my dissertation research in medium of instruction. So my path of research where I'm really interested in education is in education. Yeah, so I think that's all I can share for now, I think.
Because you left the standard question, so we're waiting. But we understand, yeah, all the very best with that, I'm sure. Something will come up. Yes, yes.
Boost there is also a trustee of Stacker Skills as well, so he does a lot of work around that. And he's contributed enormously to the stuff we've done on dialogue.
Thank you very much. Yes, very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
Thank you.
Have a hand up there.
Is there a hand up? For Esther, please. Please introduce yourself.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
All right. I'm Esther Kunkwezi. I'm from the University of Malawi. I'm actually in the School of Education, but unfortunately, I just joined this talk on higher education, and I would really like to hear more about this presentation. I don't know if you will share a recording or something, but I'm interested in higher education, specializing in teacher education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, this is being recorded, and indeed, it will be shared with you. But of course, you can get in touch with Scholarman Partnership, and they will give you more information about this forum, but the wider work of the Scholarman Partnership. But thank you so much for coming and for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
One of the areas that's on my agenda here, but before I do that, can I ask those in the room who haven't spoken, Emma hasn't, who would like to quickly give an update?
Yeah, I'll just quickly give an update on the work we're doing. I think, Peter, I do need to connect with you in terms of looking at ways of engaging, particularly with poverty experienced people in Malawi, using a particular model of critical dialogue based on prairie for the educators in here, pedagogy of the oppressed, looking at ways in which you can use a very systematic model in order to give poverty experienced people the power to take control of meetings, contribute to research, and those types of things. We developed the model originally to tackle inequalities in school visits to places in Malawi, and what we're doing now is developing it to tackle the problem around sexual initiation camps. And the particular problem that we have there, this is absolutely Malawian led, I'd just like to say. So we've got films and things that we can show you, and we're privileged enough to know what's going on, because as Davey will attest, we are very, very much Malawian led. So the sexual initiation camps, the Kasasa Fumbi that many people don't think are happening because they're illegal, actually are really happening. And we're wanting to extend our critical dialogue group to hairdressers who are being trained at Vocational Skills Centre, so that they can be trained in ways to have conversations with women, and barbers to have conversations with men, because of course this isn't women's problem, only women's problem to solve. And that's sort of where we're going in the future, specifically focusing on that practice for the next year or two.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Emma. Appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. And Emma is a long-standing member of the SMP, and yeah, has been running very successfully the Stacker.
Yeah, Stacker Skills. Linked with Stacker. Yeah.
Yes.
I do feel I have got a bit of imposter syndrome.
It's important to share that, that important work that you're doing. Now, on my agenda list, I've got something to do with the SDGs. Now, your names are being mentioned. I don't know whether your name will come in there as well. Malawi focused SDG resources. Your name is being mentioned. So your name is being mentioned. So maybe is this something you'd like to share, for example, with us on the Malawi SDGs or work associated with that?
Yeah, sure. I can start a little bit and then maybe Velia will add on. So the current work that I'm doing, I'm thinking more about the legacy event that Tracy had brought up earlier that will be happening in October. So it's a really great event because not only is it looking back, but it's also looking forward in terms of the research that Strathclyde has been doing, connected not only to Malawi, but Africa with the Malawi focus. And then also wondering the direction that we want to take in the future. So the amazing thing about this event, especially for postgraduate researchers, is that in many ways, postgraduate researchers are the voice of the future, and it's really important to engage with us in terms of what direction do we want to take, either as Strathclyde University, either as SMP, or anyone who is in the Scottish Malawi network in terms of research between Malawi and Scotland for the future. So I will be leading a working group for postgraduate researchers at Strathclyde, and our main aim is really to, I guess, find out how we want to be engaged. So far already, and maybe Velia will say a bit more, from the postgraduate researchers I've engaged, someone came up with a really great idea about maybe presenting all of our research in one poster. And that connects, I don't know how we'll do that. That was my comment.
There's lots of goals in Glasgow.
But it takes a tall building. So for me, I think what stood out to me when they mentioned that is more so around the SDGs. Because a lot of times when we think about my own research, my PhD project, which is focusing on children and young people with albinism, I think more around SDGs connected to inclusion and education and gender equity. However, the reality is that all of our research is connected to each one of the SDGs. So that idea of having one poster is another way of saying, how does your research connect to an SDG that is not so obvious, that is not so, immediately the first thought when you think about your research? So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, is to think outside of the SDG that we typically advocate for, the SDG that we are typically centered around. And even as I listen to the conversations in the room, when I think of renewable, sustainable energy, when I think of, you've mentioned health, I think someone online also mentioned like how health, yes, exactly. So I think the question is, how is my research that might not be directly linked to that SDG still impacting and connected to that? So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. All right, yes, you can mention that.
She wants to speak.
Yes.
No, thank you very much. In fact, an extension to what Edith has said, if indeed we are to be successful to come up with this one poster, actually it will give us like a snapshot of if at all our projects are really reaching out to all the 17 SDGs, or maybe we are not. And the important point she has mentioned is, sometimes you may think that you are focusing on maybe 2 SDGs, but in fact, you may be focusing on maybe 7 by just tackling one. So
exactly.
if we are going to be successful with that one poster, we're going to see at a glance in terms of how all these are connected. So that's what I wanted to add on what Edith presented. But apart from that, we've been working with Mitch on how the related project in terms of all the 17 SDGs and how that can be located in Malawian context. So now we have a draft, we haven't finished. And for some SDGs, we've worked with them rigorously, but we are yet to finish. We are going to meet, we are targeting maybe by June to have everything done. So that's the way I wanted editor to work. So that's what I can add. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe because Mitch is online, so at some point he can speak more. He can speak more.
Yes, because Mitch, your name was mentioned, by the way. Yeah, I was looking for you, but I saw you joined online. Your name was mentioned, therefore you have to join in because your name was mentioned.
Okay, thanks, Yonah. Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation. It's been a pleasure working with Elita and Velia and Bosco, who's also online here. This kind of sparked off from a meeting after the AGM and just looking at developing materials, because it became very clear in the early days of my role that certainly in secondaries, there wasn't an awful lot of work getting done on the SDGs, and actually some people were totally unaware of what the SDGs actually were, which I find quite strange. Bit more enthusiasm in the primaries, and what I was trying to do was then trying to create materials that would give a real Malawian focus on the SDGs. There are plenty of materials out there on poverty, hunger, inequality, whatever else, but I was obviously, being the youth and schools officer for the SMP, I was wanting to put a real Malawi focus on it. The input from Elita and Velia and Bosco has been absolutely outstanding and is fundamental to the materials we're producing. They'll be available hopefully to everybody in terms of schools for use. For that, I've spoken with some primary and some secondary teachers who might be able to help me with producing some sort of work materials to go with it. But I think it's really been able to bring home the SDGs are a global concern. It's not for people that are thousands of miles away, it's actually for people in Scotland. And we have very similar problems, sometimes on a different scale, to those who are in Malawi. And if I can get young people in this country to actually try and solve problems covering the 17 SDGs, because you're quite right, Velia, they are all interlinked. You can look at one on its own, but then you suddenly realise it's got an impact on 5 or 6 other ones immediately. If they can solve problems, say, for people that are thousands of miles away, then hopefully they can solve problems in their own country. And there's been a great deal of cooperation with myself and that with Elita, Velia and Bosco. We had a great visit to a couple of schools where we've spoken to higher modern studies classes and really give them first-hand experience of what it's like. I can know for a fact it's very easy to show video clips, it's very easy to read from a textbook. It's much more impactful if you actually get somebody who knows what they're talking about to come in and present that. And that's where Elita, Velia and Bosco really have stepped up to the mark. I'm very much just a coordinator when it comes to that. We're expanding that now to try and look at all things Malawi for that. But there is good work going out there. It's just a case of, I think, you're really trying to put a Malawi focus on it.
Appreciate it. There was Emma, and then I'll come to you.
2 quick questions. One is the poster, it's for the Strathclyde event. Is it just Strathclyde research, or is it research going on across Scotland that you're interested in tracking?
So specifically in our case, the poster would be for Strathclyde research, but then the event is open to people even outside of Strathclyde. It's open to anyone. So if it's something that you'd be interested in, we can talk more about it. It's definitely something that everyone should put on their calendar for October.
But Stuart, I think this would be brilliant for the SMP if we could take this, if they could scale it up for other people doing research across the SMP. What a fantastic tool that would be to lobby the Scottish Government with, actually, to say, look at how many SDGs have been covered by members of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. I think it's a really genius idea, actually. I love it.
Now, in fact, actually, this one is offering us a good opportunity to brainstorm the ideas we are to put into this poster, because we just talked like in passing, and then when we're talking like I need to do the work, and then maybe it work, maybe not. So bringing this idea to this table, actually, we can brainstorm and maybe improve how we can come up with that, because this is now it's in draft form.
Yeah, just to your point, Emma, Reem Mohammed is another graduate student at the University of Strathclyde who's done an internship with the SMP. She's recently, 2 weeks ago, presented a poster on SMP members and their engagement with the SDGs, where she's been doing a mapping exercise on where that is. And she's going to take that further into a dissertation level. So she couldn't join us today, unfortunately. I did want her to be here to give a little snapshot of that. She's busy moving accommodations today, so it wasn't possible. But she's actually coming to join us next Monday in a team meeting to kind of present those findings. Myself, I've seen the poster, but the rest of the team haven't. And we'll be working with her in the coming months to see how we can improve SMP members' engagement with the SDGs, but also improve members, what I want to say, them being able to celebrate the engagement that they're doing, basically, hopefully a little bit through their membership profiles that we have on the website, because if you do Google an organization or an individual, you do find that it does land on their membership profile on the SMP quite a bit. So, and we appreciate, there's lots of platforms for people to be using, but particularly when we highlight different organizations and individuals in our newsletters, we do find there's a lot of people who do, when they Google, that's the first hit they get sometimes. So we want to make sure that that's contemporary, up to date. One of the quick takeaways is, and I don't have all my SDGs memorized, I'm sorry, but life underwater was one that was identified that lots of our members, none of our members are really engaging with that, which is a bit of a shame considering how large Lake Malawi is.
But I think one of the things she did notice, and when we were looking through the database with her, is that, people put things on initially. So for example, JHI is on there and it says it's to do with agriculture, but JHI now, have the hydronations, water centre and things like that. So it's also just that updating nature of what's there. We're all guilty of that, right? So no, it's been an interesting little project that she's done. I think it's been quite useful.
Peter,
thank you.
And actually, Chad, we had this workshop under SDGs. Sometimes this workshop actually was an eye-opener to me, because sometimes you may think, or we may think that we are only targeting maybe 2 SDGs. But if you read in between the lines, you may see that a certain SDG is being touched. So we may think that maybe life underwater is not being touched. But from the earlier only presentation online, someone mentioned about the groundwater and the toilet. If we dig through, we may find that there could be some connection. So it will be really interesting to borrow the idea of just mapping everything else and see the connection around the SDGs.
Yes, Peter.
That experience was one of my lines, but that how Malawian voices come first. No, I was just going to say that Tracy mentioned this big event in October, celebrating 60 years of Strathclyde. I think it's much more important, which celebrates 25 years of the Malawi Millennium Project, when we set up just before the millennium. At that time, we struggled to ensure that this project wasn't the white gaze, that it was actually led by Malawian needs. And because we had Tracy in Malawi, she kept us focused entirely on real issues, pressing issues, Malawian issues. So it was a partnership. But the sense I get listening to this and hearing what people say is that that's moved on. And this is truly now a Malawian-led partnership. And I think that's really heartwarming to hear everything we have today. And the other big development is how this has spread. At the beginning, it was just Strathclyde and the University of the West of Scotland through Bell College, not to be forgotten. But we've heard so much today about really important initiatives at Dundee University, at Glasgow University, which we're talking about. We know about the Edinburgh University MasterCard, and we know about Queen Margaret University. It is just great that so many of Scotland's best universities are getting involved in this. One question I wanted to ask, though, was much of our focus in Malawi project was assisting Malawian academics who at that time couldn't get further in their careers without a master's degree and then a PhD degree, and really proud that so many of the staff at Polytechnic are now Strathclyde graduates, thanks to some finagling behind the scenes with fee waivers and the like. Is that still the case? Is that still an important thing for Scottish universities to be doing, is my question.
I think, can I give,
yeah.
well, I can just give a discussion I had with the Vice Chancellor of MaSP back in February, where I know that their strategy now is that 90% of their staff should have a PhD within the next 10 years. So sending staff out for PhDs is a high priority to get them up to that standard that they want for the education, because also recognising kind of back to Yonah's issues, I know, with the kind of equivalency of degrees and that kind of thing is really a high priority. So actually MaSP at the moment are paying for staff to go to Asia, South Africa to do PhDs, and I think as partner institutions for a long time, we also have a role to play in making that more accessible in the UK, which is something we're doing at Strathclyde, but I'm sure more institutions can do the same thing elsewhere as well. And obviously Dundee have their great Africa Scholars Programme and things too, but I think there's lots of great opportunity for us to feed in.
Sorry, I just would like to put on the table here that our Westminster government is not helpful in this in terms of the visa situation. I think most universities around this table are being cut off at the knees by not being able to get international students because they're now seen to be part of the immigration figures, and they're not able to bring family either. And I think if, you know, until that's sorted, all these opportunities are going to go to Canada and other places for. And I think that we shouldn't let up in lobbying against that. I know at our university, we're recording some case studies at the moment of the amazing impact that students have made that have come from particularly the African continent. And I think if the Scotland-Malawi partner, if we could squeeze something around that in, I think the universities would be very grateful.
Yes,
It's really good.
yeah, I think that's an important issue that you raised about government visa regulation changes. And that has just impacted all of us within my own university and almost all of us really across the UK. So I think if all of us can do something and add that to a voice, really, that's what important.
We've had to reduce the number of PhD bursaries, and I know at some universities they've been abolished altogether because universities are in such financial straits caused by this lack of international student recruitment.
Indeed.
Thanks very much, and Emma, for the point. Happy to work with you on this and to raise it with British High Commission when we go to Malawi in June. As you know, we also provide the Secretariat, the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, for the all-party parliamentary group from Malawi, chaired by Patrick Grady. I'm happy to raise that with them as well. We know that the UK's International Development Committee is in Malawi right now on its delegation there this week. But yeah, very happy to work with you on that. We've good channels with colleagues who do the day-to-day work. And the UK VI Hub, as you know, Chad does a great job leading with our work on that. It shouldn't need letters from us to make a smooth running visa process, but it does still seem to be the case. But
thank you for that.
Just to mention, we're glad that we'll be hearing from Linda in a few minutes, I think. But Linda, I think is meeting with that delegation this afternoon in the long way. So it might be a bit last time to ask her to raise that issue today.
It's a good coincidence, isn't it? Good coincidence. Actually, not talking about Linda. Actually, Linda, I know that you're online. I'd like to invite Linda. Linda Dembo is the acting CEO for MaSP, our sister organization in Malawi. And if Linda, if you are able to unmute and put a picture if you can so people can see you, especially those who haven't met you yet. And please, could you brief us on what's been happening there, higher education wise? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yonah, and everyone. Good to see you. It feels like I'm in the room with you. So many people I know are in the room there, and the envy you. Good to see you, Beria, there. I need to mention you. And everybody there, I'm so excited. And I mean, a lot of takeaways from this meeting. And I think it's really high time that we had this catch up at this forum. And I think it's long overdue. I think the last time we met was in December, was it, Yonah?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's quite a good forum, and I think a lot of takeaways. And I think as the role of MaSP and SMP to share information, it's something that we really need to take seriously. That this forum we need to meet as often as possible so that we can share as much as possible on the many things that are taking place. I really loved the discussion around SDGs and that. Yes, the interconnection within the SDGs, and that when we have achieved one SDG, we have already achieved another. And yeah, looking forward to hearing more on what is really going to come out on that, Elita and Velia. And I know a lot interesting as well to hear about the sanitation project, pit latrines. I would say that maybe you could also consider not just pit latrines. In Malawi, there's not that connection in terms of what do they call them? I think even the connection that is there for sewage in Malawi. So like in other households, it's not necessarily connected to the main pipeline. So every household has their own sewage system. Yeah, something like that. So it's not only about pit latrines, I guess, but it's something major. But I would really be looking forward to seeing how that research turns out. Yeah, so I've seen that a lot of Malawians are in Scotland and doing studies in Scotland, and I don't know how many Malawians really know what research programs you're doing. So I guess MaSP and SMP, we do have a lot of work to make sure that people know what is happening in terms of further and higher education. And I guess we'll take it up as Malawi Scotland partnership to make sure that our forum this side, the Malawi side, is also well connected, and that we are doing our best so that there's a lot of connection and collaboration in terms of what is happening in Scotland as well as here in Malawi. I'm excited, as I said, and taking up the challenge to make sure that we are really, giving out the information that is needed out there and facilitating the further and higher education forums as it's need to be. Thank you, Chad and Stuart and SMP team for putting this together. Thank you, Yonah Matemba, and thank you everyone in the room for attending this forum and the ones online. I'm really excited to meet all of you and that you took the time to be here with us. Really excited, and thank you for participating. Let's take this further and let's form those collaborations. Let's learn more on what your research topics are taking, the journey that it's taking. Let's do this together and let's hold hands together so that we working together towards achieving the best for Malawi as well as for Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before you go, Linda, I put one big question. Any updates from the forum there? Any kind of updates in terms of what you guys have been doing there on the ground? Is there anything that the forum here can learn? Any connections you want to be forged with us?
Oh yeah, there's a lot that is actually on the pipeline. We are in talks with the chair so that we could formulate a forum whereby researchers and universities here in Malawi can actually collaborate and talk together easily so that they can actually collaborate on research topics. So we are hoping that we'll also be able to amplify and connect with those that have studied in Scotland so that they are able to come together and share their experience in studying in Scotland so that it will be easier for those that are trying to get to Scotland to study, to get information on how to study in Scotland and how to get their way in Scotland. So that's what we are in, what is in the pipeline at the moment. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to say for colleagues here in Scotland that MaSP has a similar forum like ours, and that's the next question I was asking to find out the updates and how we can collaborate and work together. But thank you so much, Linda, for that update. Appreciate it. Can I open the floor to anyone who didn't speak, but it was something wanted to share, either the thing they had planned to share, or after listening to all these discussions and issues that have come up, they feel something has pricked their mind and they would like to share with the forum, both here and online as well, or even a question.
So unfortunately, I think Bosco had another meeting because he obviously has been mentioned, was working with Alita and Belia and Mitch on the SDG work. But he did tell us that we were trying to get him to join us here in person, but he had a meeting before and a meeting after. So I was going to ask him to say hi, but I see he's left, unfortunately. They on to his next meeting as we do these days.
Yeah, yes, just
coming back, you know, the work that you've been doing with the schools and with Mitch on the SDGs, it was just more of a, well, I remember at the event yesterday at Glasgow University, there was someone from Glasgow Caledonian University. It's actually not a GCU activity, but it's something called a cascade. And they were talking about this idea of reversing the gaze. So I think the person's name was Mark Anderson, and they're looking at bringing 60 students to a summer school in Scotland from Africa to look at tackling the problems in the global north. So like, these are problems we face in Scotland, what do you think solutions could look like? And I think that's a really interesting idea. And, you know, from Mitch looking at what you're trying to do with the SDG work and things as well, it might be worth reaching out to him. I don't know if it's all set in stone and it's definitely happening or it's an aspiration, but sounds like an interesting endeavor.
Look at come from Malawi as well, we don't know. So.
And I don't know when he says students, he's talking about university students, I'm assuming, but I don't know what level, so, or how in the world they're funding 60 people to come, I have no idea. But yeah, but it sounds really exciting and interesting, so worth something to look at.
Thank you for sharing that. It's important to know this.
Oh, we've gone out my head for tomorrow. So.
I think I want to just add on that, even as I think about some of the schools that we've been visiting with Mitch, Belia, and Bosco, just that concept of reverse. Because it's really interesting when you compare higher education, such as universities, with primary and secondary school learners. The way that they think and the new perspective that they bring has been really valuable for us. So I'm thinking specifically around one of the first schools we visited, which was New Battle Secondary School. We talked a lot about some of the challenges for example, girls in Malawi to access education. But I think out of that discussion also came this reverse perspective in terms of the strengths of resilient learners in Malawi, and how at the end of, you know, this education journey, which may have been challenging, comes out someone who maybe is sometimes more resilient than a learner, for example, in Scotland, who didn't go through such, you know, challenges. So anyway, my point is, I've personally enjoyed visiting the schools, because when you meet with young people and youngsters, they have a different perspective to the same conversations we're having, even if it's around SDGs or education specifically, but they do look at it from a way where we can see the strengths of Malawi as well. So I wanted to add that.
Yeah, just leading on directly from that this focus among young people is the focus of the dialogue groups that happen at STECA, where Scottish pupils meet with Malawians to discuss the SDGs and ways of overcoming them. And it is absolutely fantastic, the learning. And there's a little film, I can send you the link for the minutes, but there's a little film that records the Scots and the Malawians saying what they've learned as a result of the dialogue groups. And one of the things that came up in my research, the evaluation of them, which was actually never, it just emerged from the data rather than being something I was looking for, was resilience. And actually the big thing that the Scots say that they learned from the Malawians was resilience, how to overcome my own challenges in the way that the people are in Malawi, which obviously is huge and is a real deficit in Scotland. You know, young people's resilience in Scotland is a massive, I've got colleagues in social work, and it is a real issue that we're looking at. And so the learning that has come that way, not only about climate change and, you know, stopping producing stuff and learning how to repurpose and, you know, the more obvious things that we can learn from Malawians. But that resilience issue, I think, is huge. But I'll give you that film and maybe you can have a wee look at it, because I think it's interesting. It's just a 5-minute look, but it's a snapshot of what they've learned from each other.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much, especially what Ada just shared about once you start engaging with a different community, you begin to learn. And I think what you're sharing, and I think what Emma has just emphasized, is counteracting what's called the deficit model of discussion. That Malawi is only presenting problems to other people. We are poor, we are this, and all these sort of things. It is as if this is nothing that others can learn from Malawi, you know? So I've got my own PhD student from Pakistan, started the same deficit model. We stopped it. And also looking at resilience amongst women in Pakistan. And then she discovered Malala Yousafzai and all these women who have made it against the odds.
Wow.
And there's a story to tell. And I think I like this forum because we get to this point where we realize what's really important here is to share experiences, right? So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, but I think we need to do more of that. And so when we talk about a symbiotic relationship with Malawi, this is precisely what we're talking about. We talk about people sharing problems and solutions. Both sides of the sea. That's what it is. And then we all learn from each other and from one another. So thank you so much for that. So that was the chair's.
Sorry, can I just chip in one other wee thing for the school side of things? I couldn't get my hand gesture thing to work. Although it's not further higher education, we have actually set up another project where 8 schools in Malawi have been supplied with science kit, and they're now tying with 8 schools in Scotland here. It's part of the Climate Smarter project. So they'll hopefully be able to exchange results, findings, whatever else. So again, just backing on what Emma's saying about having the dialogue, being able to speak to each other for as well from a science kind of point of view. Looking at that, so they've been supplied with this primary and secondary youngsters. It's no further education, it's no tertiary education in that sense. But it's another thing that with the SMP have managed to broker for that. So hopefully we'll be able to extend that project as well in the future, because the Young Engineers and Science Club Scotland, who have worked with us on this, are very keen to try and push this forward to try and really bring the sort of idea of climate change and being climate smarter home to people in both countries.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mitch. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time together today, both online and here. Anybody who have last comments or questions you'd like to make before we bring the meeting to a close?
I think just to go back to the conversation that Yonah and I were having before the meeting began, even for this meeting, we were trying to land on a thematic theme for the meeting. But at the same time, we don't want to exclude any members or any SMP or MaSP members or academic members because they might look and say, oh, well, I don't work in that area. We were talking about our silos earlier. But we are welcome to and open to any suggestions from anyone today. There are several apologies received today, obviously with timing, being able to be available both online or in person, highly encouraging in person because of the spending time face to face. But going forward, I see a couple comments in the box there about how regularly we meet, and we were discussing that. So we'd like to propose that the next Further and Higher Education Forum takes place on Thursday, the 19th of September. We were looking at the academic calendar in terms of the summer break, everyone's starting back up. And I can't confirm this, but I will try to contact the Glasgow City Chambers where we had the previous forum, and that's where we'll be Glasgow based that side. So all to be confirmed, but just to give you the pencil in so that no one, can keep that free. Similar time, probably 11 a.m. UK time on Thursday, the 19th of September. And in the run up to that, if there is a theme or a topic that we really want to dig into deep, we're welcome to explore that. Some of the things that were brought up today, it's good to have an open table for all discussions, but if we really do want to hone in on something as a group, we're happy to program it that way.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. In fact, we just answering a question that's online from Kasim Mpunga, who was asking about schedules for our meetings or the forum. So probably that's helpful that we have one coming in September. But in future, we might put dates for future meetings as well, so that people can plan in advance for these meetings. I find these forum meetings really valuable and really helpful. We've been doing this for quite a while, but every time people come in joining us and sharing new perspectives and insights in the kind of work we do, the kind of connections they have. But by doing that, others begin to learn also good practices and sharing ideas and thoughts on how to do things. And hopefully in future, these can form collaborations and research projects that are completely outside us. We're facilitated, but we don't control. I hope that will be the final outcome of this. I'm also keen, just to Linda there, I'm also keen to hear more about the work in Malawi, or what the forum in Malawi is doing. I'm really keen to see what kind of connections can be made between individual members, but also the groups that can work with other groups here in Malawi. So with those remarks and the dates being mentioned by Chad of our next meeting in September, if we don't have any further questions.
I could just a couple of closing points, not necessarily remarks on the meeting, but we feel that going forward, we want to make sure we say this is all our events, that if you're not an SMP member, we are very open and we pretty much allow anyone who registers in our events to join us, and we encourage that, but we do also highly appreciate your membership. But if you can join, there's a link in the chat box now. One thing about membership, obviously between SMP and MaSP, we work very closely together, and it's fantastic to have so many Malawi academics in this context, with us in Scotland and are active members of SMP. But I'm sure you have colleagues that are back in Malawi, and we want them to be very active members of MaSP as well. Don't forget about Scotland when you go back to Malawi, and that's what keeps these synergies alive. You will receive a link in your email right after this meeting in terms of a survey. I promise you is 3 quick questions, but it is very vital for us to get feedback. We use this in our reporting for our funding, but most importantly, the open-ended question at the end on what we found valuable, what we could do better. We do look at that. We do every week when we have our team meeting, we look at our previous events and try to improve them. And finally, in the further and higher education kind of in terms of research, our next event is going to be Wednesday, the 29th of May, which is a cross-party group, Malawi cross-party group at Scottish Parliament. We'll be hearing about the Chitetezo project, which is a road traffic project that's very multifaceted, multidisciplinary between, I'm going to probably leave somebody out, but Stirling University, Glasgow School of Art, University of Malawi, I think even Jacaranda School in Malawi. They've done some really fantastic work. Check our event page, you'll hear more about that. So, sorry?
Edinburgh.
And Edinburgh.
University of Edinburgh. So, like I say, the link, the registration for the cross-party group is already live on our website. So hopefully, either you can join us in person or online for that event as well. But yeah, final, just thank you for everyone who has joined us today for your contributions. We appreciate we didn't have a set agenda, but I think it was a good space to share. I found it very valuable. I hope everybody else has. And thanks to the SMP team for a little bit that goes behind the scenes to make sure these events are pulled off, but particularly to our chair, Dr. Matemba, for coming all the way over from air to join us in person. We really do appreciate it.
From Glasgow, in case those people. Straight away from Glasgow.
So thank you all very much. So.
Thank you. Can I just say one last thing, that this is recorded to those who want a tape of which they can get access to it, isn't it?
Yes. If you're registered for the event, you automatically will get an email in your box with the link to it. It is actually the same event link that you registered with. It just gets shifted to our past event page. And it will have a recording there. And the chat box as well. Those of you who have introduced yourself in the chat box, that'll be uploaded onto that past event page. And if, Emma, you were referring to your video for the TECA dialogue, you send that, we can load that into resources as well onto that event page.
I've sent you the brief for the Guardian Waiting Shelter research as well.
Oh yeah, that too, if they can be shared, I think that's what.
Any projects or things that were mentioned today, please, send it through to us and we'll load it onto that event page.
Our colleagues in Malawi, I've seen that our colleagues from the non-government universities, the DMI and so on. So please tell other people about the forum and the work of the forum so that they can join as well. They can find us online easily, and then they can register their interest, but also tell us more, and then we can be sending them links. Everybody else, who have attended today, please, I want to thank you for coming and thank you so much. We'll see you another time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.